So, remember in a video I did the other day, I was saying that I was going to show you guys the red-haired giants that were in that sleep stasis. Well, when I was looking for it today, I came across an article right here that I want to read to you. I haven't read it even myself, so we're going to be reading it together. But it says, Awakened Stasis Giants Secretly Located and Imprisoned by Global Elite. This is by expopolitics.org. It says, Awakened Stasis Giants Secretly Located and Imprisoned by Global Elite. This is written by Dr. Michael Salla on April 2nd, 2016, you guys. Giants that have been in hibernation in stasis chambers for thousands of years are awakening and being sought out by elite military forces, according to several independent sources. After being located, awakened giants are allegedly being captured and held hostage by powerful global elite groups that do not want the rest of humanity to learn the truth. Secret space program whistleblower Corey Goode was among the first to publicly disclose the existence of stasis chambers that were holding perfectly preserved giants for thousands of years. In an August 4th, 2015 interview on the popular show Cosmic Disclosure, Goode discussed how he had accessed information on smart glass pads during his covert service about these sleeping giants and the technology of the stasis chambers that were preserving them. A side note, I learned a lot about Corey Goode a few years ago, so I'm just going to quickly fill you in on who he is and what he says happened to him. He said when he was in grade school that he was in one of those, remember those tag programs, talented, exceptional, and gifted? Well, apparently they took him at that age. He says he spent 20 years on Mars and then came back, and they put him back in a young body. They tried to erase his memory, but it came back. So that's just a little bit about Corey Goode. So after his memories came back, he started talking about everything that happened. He did a lot of interviews with David Wilcox on Cosmic Disclosure. Honestly, be careful if you go and look at that information. That's all I'm going to say about that. Says, Goode said, when I was in the program, the secret space program, when I would have time to sit and look at the smart glass pad, there was lots of information that I looked at. And one of them was that there were beings that they found underneath the surface of the earth, usually underneath mountains, mountains, Indian burial mounds, and they were not dead, but weren't quite alive. They called them stasis beings, and it turned out that they had used a technology that had been there long prior from this group they called the ancient builder race. So it didn't put the beings in stasis that a lot of us would think of as in being frozen, but it just changed the way they experienced time. They would probably go to sleep for maybe 20 minutes and 30,000 years or so would pass by. Do you guys remember the movie, oh my gosh, Underworld, where they had the werewolves and the vampires, but remember how the vampires, they would each take turns being awake, and then the rest of them would be in a sleep stasis, because Celine got in trouble for waking up. I think his name was Victor, and she got in trouble for waking up Victor early. But they were in sleep stasis. Good described the size of the beings found in the stasis chambers when they were first discovered in the 19th century all over the planet. And to look down in, they saw these very tall beings, or very large giant humans with reddish beards. These tall red-headed, red-bearded groups were in Europe and South and North America, and apparently at one time before the last ice age, apparently, they had a very large area that they ruled. Good gave examples of stasis chambers that had been found around the world. Some are still operating with different modern human groups that had learned to use the technology, while others had been damaged and the beings in stasis had died as a result. I'm going to play this, okay? Look at all that gold. Notice that headdress thing looks like stuff that you'd see like in Egypt or all over the world. The same types of things. Look at that. Looks like writing of some sort, doesn't it? Notice the skin color on these beings. Wonder what that says. That's a lot of gold. Okay, so says according to Good, once located, the stasis giants were kept hidden. Says that was recorded in 2008, by the way. And that was discovered in Kurdistan region of Iran. Says according to Good, one located, the stasis giants were kept hidden, and any that awakened would join others and not be allowed to interact with the general public. According to Stephen Quayle, who has written several books about giants, elite U.S. military forces have been stationed around the world, including trouble spots such as Afghanistan, to locate the giants. Quayle cities elite military personnel who have spoken about battles with the giants. During one of Quayle's radio interviews on Coast to Coast AM, one of his military informants called in and told the audience about an incident in Afghanistan involving a deadly encounter between a 12-foot giant and U.S. Special Forces. The informant claimed that the giant had killed 9 members of an elite team sent to capture it, and it took a second team to arrive and finally kill the giant. I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Steve, in your book, True Legends, you talk about a Smithsonian cover-up whenever giant bones are involved. So I want to ask you the question that everybody always asks. Where are all the giant bones?
It's interesting, Tim, because of the bias of the Smithsonian and their contempt for out-of-place artifacts. Every time giants were found, it didn't matter if it was on the West Coast, the Arctic, the Antarctic, believe it or not, the East Coast, the Ohio River mounds. They always have a fabulous cutoff point, meaning once the Smithsonian is notified and those bones are sent to the Smithsonian, they're never heard from again. And there's denials. A good example of that, it was a famous Kincaid expedition to the Grand Canyon, where they found the Egyptian citadel. Even the Phoenix Gazette carried that story. So, Tim, the cover-up has always been to keep this biblically relevant topic out of the minds of the people, so at an appropriate time in the future, they can claim whatever they want to claim, and they'll claim anything and everything apart from the true biblical origin of giants.
So, Steve, even during World War II, there were reports of giants and cannibalism coming out of the Solomon Islands. What was that all about?
After World War II, people couldn't reconcile the fact that a lot of servicemen, U.S. servicemen, had been eaten, cannibalized, as well as Japanese. And the fascinating investigation I've come up with was the fact that the Solomon Islands are riddled with stories of cannibalistic giants and even living giants to this day. I was contacted by a man named Marius, who was literally going to meet me in California with, let's just say this, irrefutable evidence. But he said to me on the phone, he said, Steve, I'm being followed, and I'm not sure I'll even make it there alive. What has to be asked, the question that needs to be asked and has to be asked, is that why do people who have the evidence, why are they intimidated? Why are they threatened? Why are they disappeared? What is this cover-up? And I'll tell you the bottom line. They do not want people to understand that the sons of God, the fallen angels, saw that the daughters of earth were fair, mated with them, and produced a literally new race of hybrid beings that the Bible calls the Rephaim. And the Rephaim are with us today. They're genetic trace, they're genetic markers. And when we get into super soldiers, Tim, the super soldiers, the most important expenditures made are to identify not only the bloodline, but the genetic traits. There are people literally not only wanting to bring the giants back, but to insert giant genes in our soldiers to give them the super soldier ability. More money is being spent to identify genetic traces and markers, the actual gene prints of giants, both dead and extractable DNA from their teeth, from whatever cells in the mummies, to literally living giants today.
So in other words, what you're saying is somebody's trying to weaponize giant genes.
Absolutely. And the super soldier program is probably one of the most almost unbelievable, yet so believable programs that the U.S. military is involved in. And all the underground labs, all the secret places around the planet, everybody's after the same thing. They want comic book heroes that we would only laugh about and have laughed about maybe for 50 years. And now it's no longer fantasy, it's fact.
And we're not just talking about superhuman strength, are we? We're also talking about superhuman cerebral capabilities that the giants had.
Absolutely. Speaking of cerebral capabilities, the giants, even when they're in a stasis state, that means in suspended animation, whether it's Dr. Ernest Moldashev in Russia, in the mountains of Tibet, whether it's a whole underground base in which some of these entities, these living giants, are present, they have so much cerebral energy that they actually have what's called the red line, and you can't go past that, or literally, they claim, according to special operations, 4-star generals, that literally it causes a person to almost come apart at the seams. It not only drives people mad, but it literally just causes them to go to pieces. You understand that's the ultimate weapon. You know, Michael Crichton with Jurassic Park brought us dinosaurs, and now we're hearing about woolly mammoths being cloned, and we're hearing all these news stories that Neanderthal is no longer a member of our family tree, which I've said for 30 years. But the point being is that it's all about weapons. And as a general said to me in special operations, it doesn't matter if it's ancient technology, doesn't matter if it's ancient genetics, those of us are either fighting to keep it out of the hands of the wrong people, or the wrong people are fighting us to kill us to get it into their hands. There's a war going on, and it's no longer just dusty old bones in a museum stuck away.
So, Steve, according to Genesis 6, fallen angels had sexual relations with human women, creating these hybrid half-angel, half-human giants. In a military weaponized sense, what other capabilities might these super soldiers have if they have the genes of giants?
Well, beyond the obvious of strength, beyond the obvious of almost supervision, super hearing, one of the most remarkable things from my 4-star general friend was basically said they hunt by DNA. Every person's DNA has a specific harmonic that they could identify a specific target's DNA and assign a Fido, the 19-foot giant, to go after. And it was interesting because when you think about it, even going back to Jack the Giant Killer and Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, as I've been researching all these, remember the statement? Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. You go to the Bible, and whose blood cried out? Righteous Abel blood cried out to the living God after Cain slew him. So the harmonics of blood is fascinating. That's why the cry of the innocent blood is such a big deal in God's eyes, and it truly is, because the blood has a signal, a frequency. And there have been studies to prove that. So they want the...
Wow, that's crazy. I just have to say this really quick. I had shared one of the dreams that I had, I don't know, a couple weeks back about this giant creature that was hunting down people, and in my dream, it would go by other people, like it knew who it was hunting. That's just crazy. Okay, sorry, I know this is interesting and I interrupted. Hold on.
Giants to be able to basically target specific DNA characteristics. Not to mention the bottom line, and you know how much I love to say that, these entities want every last human being destroyed, and in its place a hybrid. They're going to try and prove that God's a liar. Jesus himself said if the days weren't shortened, there'd be no flesh left alive. Yet for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened.
You've turned down opportunities to work with some of the major networks on documentaries concerning giants. Why have you decided not to work with them? And furthermore, why have you decided to start your own production company, Gen 6 Productions?
Tim, it's just simply this. I believe the big lie that's going to be hoisted upon the world is that the aliens created mankind, which I categorically reject. It's funny, the people that will accept the fact that the Anunnaki, star creatures, came to this planet will avoid fallen angels like a plague. I wanted the correct, in my opinion, after 40 years of research, I wanted the correct historic and biblical presentation of the giants. And quite candidly, when I talk to some of them, if I start talking about fallen angels having sex with earth women, they snicker. Well, that snicker tells me they've already made up their mind. And I said, I will only appear on camera if I can have final edit of what I say. Guess what? Nobody wanted to do that. That tells me there's agenda. So I believe this is a time that you and I are going to basically go out and say to the world, okay, here's what those guys are saying, but here's not only what the Bible says, and here's how accurate the Bible is with the history that follows. Gen 6 Productions is totally different than everything else that's on the TV, everything else that's on the documentary. Everybody's looking in a rearview mirror at history, just trying to find the bones and find the original documents of all of the different finds, and I spent 20 years doing that already. But we're taking people, Tim, simply where no one else has ever gone before. They're starting from the premise that all the giants are gone. We're starting from the premise that there are modern-day giants now who aren't suffering from acromegaly or some pituitary disorder, but they're literally going to fulfill the biblical statement of Matthew 24, where Jesus said, just as in the days of Noah, so would it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Most people do not understand the evil.
The Lord is coming, you guys. I mean, time is short. It is so short.
Most people can't even embrace the fact that this isn't about old bones. This is about a contemporary threat beyond any science fiction twisting of the facts. And that's why we're going to, I believe the best antidote, that's why we're going to do this thing, Gen 6 Productions. We're going to present information. We're going to present eyewitness testimony. Again, we're not just dealing with bones. Obviously, we'll follow the leads of bones, but we're going to show the people out there what the truth is and why this cover-up has been a multi-thousand-year cover-up, and what the expectation that everyone is going to, not only the expectation, but what is going to be presented to the people as the gods who made us. And I got to share this. When I did write the book True Legends, Genesis 6 Giants, Aliens and Fallen Angels, Angel Wars, everything I've written is to this point where Jesus said, if the days weren't shortened for the elect's sake, there'd be no flesh left alive. And the genetic tampering, the genetic destruction, the designs of the Luciferian globalists to destroy every human being on the planet, to insert their new creation, that we'll call him the Uberman, Nietzsche's statement, the Superman. What it's going to be is a super slaughter. And by giving people the correct information, by literally telling them what the end of the book is, how this plays out in history, my goal is to take away all fear and show them that the truth will make them free as long as they abide in the word of the Lord and the word of the Lord abides in them. Too many people are making too many excuses for the living God, and I'm looking for that time when the people of God will stand up, when the people of God will not take a back seat to the skeptic, whose the only agenda he has is what he's being paid to say. We're going to produce, I would say, such a different documentary form and style. I think people will be really excited, and especially to get involved with the Senate.
In other words, rather than looking for the giants that were, we're looking for the giants that are.
Absolutely. And I find it fascinating. Just as we're literally in the time of the movie of Noah, which was just a disaster biblically, it wasn't even anywhere near the scripture. But
yeah, if you guys have seen Noah, that that was like blasphemy to me. They had the fallen angels looking like damn rock people. They had, an ancestor, Cain, sneak on the ark. I was really disappointed in it, and you could tell, that nobody godly made that movie.
Times of Noah. Isn't it interesting? The times of Noah, and now we got all this interest in giants. Hello, I don't think God could give a bigger neon sign than if he wrote it in the sky. And I'm not taking liberty, but even as everything is lining up, we are in the days of Noah. In the Noah days, there were giants in the land. And now we're having Hollywood just come out with movie after movie after movie, trying to denigrate biblical Moses, it doesn't matter if it's Noah, trying to distort true history so they can insert their own history. For instance, in the movie Noah, this is pretty fascinating. Most people don't know this. The fallen angels